Maraming nagtatanong, ano ba ang mangyayari sa inaugurasyon? Ano ba ang mga pakulo? Naku, isa lang ang matitiyak ko. Ito ay magiging taimtim na seremonya. More or less, traditional pa rin ang gagawin. Hindi na kami lilihis pa sa nakagawian. Ang mahalaga ay kasama ko ang buong pamilya ko, kasama ko kayo na manunood, live man, online, at higit sa lahat, sana makisama ang panahon dahil tagulan na lang.
We begin the week with a vlog released by President-elect Bongbong Marcos over the weekend. Marcos Jr. talked about his preparations for his transition to the Malacanang office on Thursday. Inauguration preparations have been ongoing for weeks. And just this weekend, many of the roads leading to the old Congress building in Manila have been closed to traffic. But now the stage is set and the rehearsals are underway for what Marcos hopes would be a solemn ceremony and transfer of power. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho. You're watching The Big Story. In 3 days' time, the country will usher the start of a new administration, and it all begins at the National Museum in Manila. Let's take a look at the preparations for the big day in Marlene Alcaida's report.
With 3 days to go, organizers are making last-minute preparation for the oath-taking of President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The stage, including the red carpet for guests and visitors, has been set up at the National Museum. Incoming First Lady Attorney Liza Araneta Marcos even visited the venue. In his vlog, Marcos Jr. says his inauguration will be solemn and traditional.
Naku, isa lang ang matitiyak ko. Ito ay magiging taimtim na seremonya. More or less, traditional pa rin ang gagawin.
Conducting his inauguration at the National Museum was also a sentimental choice for Marcos Jr. He says he used to fetch his father in what used to be the old legislative building. 3 other presidents also held their inauguration at the National Museum: Manuel L. Quezon, Jose P. Laurel, and Manuel Rojas.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr.
The Philippine National Police and Armed Forces of the Philippines have also rehearsed for the civic and military parade. Security is also now tight, with several parts of Manila already closed off to the public. A gun ban is also in effect in NCR until July 2.
Almost 100% na po yung ating security preparation para nga po sa nalalapit na inauguration po ni President-elect BBM.
As Marcos Jr. is set to start his term, AFP spokesperson Colonel Ramon Zagala has been designated as his senior military assistant and as the commander-in-chief of the Presidential Security Group. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s predecessor, President Rodrigo Duterte, just won't exit Malacanang without fresh blows. During the inauguration of his son as Davao City Mayor, Duterte once again took the time to blast media and big business, a staple in his 6 years in office. Jem Avancenia with the story.
As is his wont, the president unleashed fresh tirades even as he nears his final curtain as chief executive. Speaking during the inauguration of his son, Davao City Mayor-elect Baste Duterte, President Rodrigo Duterte targeted media outlets in his speech, starting off with ABS-CBN. He admits to using his presidential powers to shut the network.
Ana nakawatan ang ABS-CBN. Kaya tinira po talaga sila. Talagang, well, I use the presidential powers to tell Congress that you are dealing with scoundrels, and if you continue to kowtow with them, kawawa ang Pilipino.
He insisted that the broadcasting giant never paid taxes. The SEC and the BIR have both said in the past that ABS-CBN regularly paid its taxes. Even Rappler and Inquirer were not spared.
Prieto, muna sila. Munang Inquirer puso kay mga taki. May mga announcer nila kibaw ka nagkinsa. Mga bigaon. Pugira kayo. Pretending to know everything. They continue to hunt. Ano ka lang Rappler? Ila man na. Amerikano na. It's American-owned. Maria Risa is not a Filipino.
President Duterte also claimed that several corporations approached him, this time to apologize.
Mingon sila sa ako kasi Duterte bastos o baba. bastos ko ba? Kaya tanawa ang ilang gibuhat sa akong nason. Anak kahangol ng mga dato, Ayala, in the front pages of the national dailies, apologized to me. Then followed by Pangilinan. You owe an apology dito sa mga tao nga inyong gikawatan, inyong gimaniobra to make it legal.
He also admitted that while he vowed to put an end to corruption, he said that it's already endemic.
Corruption is endemic. It cannot be stopped, but it can be minimized. It's very hard, really, to stop the corrosive effect of money. The corruption in the Philippines is very lucrative dito gyud sa taas.
He also lauded his successor's move not to attend debates, saying they were only given limited minutes and that it only benefited television marketers. Ferdinand Marcos Jr. skipped debates organized by most major television networks during the campaign. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
These are the other big stories tonight. A transition is also happening in the opposition as Vice President Leni Robredo passes on the torch to Senator Risa Hontiveros. Meanwhile, as COVID-19 cases increase, hospitals say admissions are still manageable, but a slight uptick has been noted. And thinking of e-bikes as an alternative to driving gas-powered cars? Here's one more reason which might help you consider just that. The MMDA has set up a solar-powered free charging station for e-bikes. These big stories after the break. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Gretchen Hong. With 3 days left in office, outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo is passing the torch to Senator Risa Hontiveros as the next head of the opposition. Marian Enriquez has the report.
You are now the leader of the opposition. That's what outgoing Vice President Leni Robredo said as she administers the oath of re-elected Senator Risa Hontiveros. She also expressed confidence that the senator will continue to stand up for good governance.
Lahat kami masaya na ikaw yung natitirang humahawak ng ating bandila. Kampante kami na patuloy mong ipapakipaglaban yung lahat na pinaniniwalaan natin kung ano yung mabuti at tama sa pamamahala.
Hontiveros vows to work with Robredo and other opposition leaders to address inequality. She also promised to go after fake news peddlers.
This is a stern warning to all the dubious characters in the fake news universe. This time, we will not let your reckless disregard for truth slander our democracy, our country, ever again.
But while Hontiveros is up for another 6 years in government, Robredo is bidding goodbye to the vice presidency in 3 days. Some of her staff in the OVP cannot help but be emotional during their last General Assembly.
So walang paalaman, moving up lang. It's been the greatest honor of my life to be serving alongside all of you.
Robredo personally thanked everyone she worked with at the Quezon City Reception House.
Pinakauna nating pangarap na gawin yung OVP na hindi lang siya ceremonial office. Na gawin siyang mas advocacy centered, and I think na-accomplish natin yon. Pero yung hard work talaga nasa sa inyo.
In her radio program Biserbisyong Leni's last episode on Sunday, Robredo looked back in the past 6 years and said that she has no regrets.
Dahil hindi kami tinuring nakakampi, hindi kami tinuring na bahagi ng pamahalaan, natuto kami na maghanap ng paraan. Kasi pag mahirap, nagiging mahusay kayo. Pag mahirap, naghahanap ka ng paraan kasi hindi applicable yung paraan.
This is not the end for Robredo's public service, though, as she will be launching the Angat Buhay NGO in July. She also said that she will go back to doing volunteer work as well as reclaiming lost time with her daughters. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
With the newly anointed Senator Risa Hontiveros at the helm of a broken opposition, what would this mean for checks and balances in government and democracy in general? That big question and more with political analyst Dindo Manhit. Welcome to The Big Story, Professor.
Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening, all your televiewers.
All right, Professor Manhit, under the leadership of Senator Risa Hontiveros, how do you see the minority bloc in the Senate forming? And I guess the more important question would be, would they have a significant voice and significant numbers for checks and balances?
I think it will be a hard work for Senator Risa. And you also have to accept that I think she will be partnered with Senator Coco Pimentel, who I heard decided to be part of the minority. So we see the two of them will be in tandem in creating the checks and balance, in making government more accountable, more transparent, and maybe more responsive in their action. That is the role of a legislator, to have oversight over actions of the executive.
Who else do you see moving to the minority bloc of the opposition?
Right now, I just see the two of them, but we hear of stories that possibly the Cayetano siblings, as always, position themselves as independent in previous Congresses. So they might also join the minority, but right now what's clear is that we have a Senator Risa and Senator Coco be part of the minority as we enter the 19th Congress towards the end of July.
Now, Senator Risa Hontiveros earlier conceded that the opposition took a beating in the past elections, and with that knowledge, and also she voiced out against fake news. With all of that, what do you think are the lessons that need to be learned to form a formidable opposition that the public actually believes in?
I think it's critical to any political groups to look at elections as a contest, and the best way to understand and win this contest for votes for voters is to understand the voters itself. True, there are mechanisms that have spread fake news, disinformation, but the only way to counter them is fight them with a better story, a better narrative, a better policy proposal. You cannot simply force your way of thinking to the Filipino voters, because at the end of the day, elections are about voters. But I've always called it a voter-centered campaign. We saw it as early as the first surveys that we ran in the Institute in October. How at the time we saw the strength of a united ticket between a Marcos and a Duterte, and how strong they are and how they are perceived more positively. That should have been countered, but instead we see the opposition focusing on what they thought was their narrative, not really listening to the voters. It's good to understand the voters and build a campaign around it. And that's, I think, what Senator Risa did on her own.
Now,
She
speaking of
positioned herself as senator.
Speaking of what we picked up from the past elections, of course, one of the things that came out of that, was born out of that, was the Pink Movement and the Angat Buhay NGO. Now, how do you think that will translate to the incoming administration, the incoming opposition? And what do you think would be Vice President Leni Robredo's role in the next 6 years?
At the end of the day, what we see is an energized base of supporters for outgoing Vice President Robredo. How they keep that support group, how they keep on energizing the support group, would depend on the moves that they will make in the coming months and maybe first year. Because they have to look at the short term, and the short term is a mid-year election. Can they offer themselves as an alternative view enough to be elected nationally into the Senate with VP Leni and other possible returning senators from the opposition? So that's something that they should look at. And how can they reach out and turn this 28% voters or 15 million voters went for VP Leni to elect independent senators or opposition senators 3 years from now?
All right, well, definitely a lot of lessons to learn from the past elections. Maraming salamat. That was Mr. Dindo Manhit, political analyst. Meanwhile, in COVID news, aside from an uptick in COVID-19 cases, health experts also saw a slight increase in COVID hospitalizations. Dr. Jose De Grano, president of the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines, says apart from Metro Manila, some regions recorded a rise in COVID admissions. These include regions 3, 4, and some areas in the Visayas. De Grano assured, though, that private hospitals are ready should there be another surge in cases.
For the past probably several weeks, we have not experienced any really increase in the number of admissions of severe COVID cases. So the hospitals are really prepared for that. But for any surge in the number of cases.
For the big story in sports, with the success of the recently concluded Volleyball Nations League, FIVB officials assured the Philippines of another opportunity to stage the tournament, including the main World Championship event. Thousands of Pinoy fans trooped to the Smart Araneta Coliseum to witness the world-class court action of the VNL, and they were not disappointed one bit. Reigning Olympic champions France swept the Philippine leg after taking down several top volleyball nations. But it was local favorites Japan who stole the show, as they even held a meet and greet with the fans.
It will be a good chance for showing our volleyball, Japanese volleyball, to Philippine fans. And even when he get 1 point, the fans really screaming and encourage us to play in front of the big fans.
Time for another quick break. More of the big stories when we return. Big Story, I'm Gretchen Ho. Nowadays, we take every opportunity to save up on cash. This store in Quezon City might just be a good option to do just that, as they allow customers to buy by the gram. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza takes us around the Back to Basics Eco Store.
With almost everything getting more expensive by the day, consumers are now finding ways to save even just a few cents. Luckily for the residents of Maginhawa Street in Quezon City, a store is allowing them to buy by the grams. They have just a store to bring in this kind of convenience. And to further save off on cost, this Takal store is just into sustainability as they promote recycling and reusing plastic containers.
Ang laking bagay na binabayaran mo sa mga binibili mong essentials ay yung packaging. Especially kung nasa mga gallons or nasa mga bote. So, ang laki nang nadadagdag doon. So, here, if you bring your own containers, which you are encouraged to do so, no? If you bring your own containers, yung content lang yung babayaran mo and by the gram pa talaga.
This means that for the likes of Jenny, she only has to get what she needs. Like in this case, 399 grams of salt, only for 16 pesos.
I also like kasi the idea that to refill already the containers that we have.
Along with cooking ingredients, cleaning supplies are also available in the Takal store.
Halimbawa dito mga kapatid sa dishwashing liquid, makukumpara mo siya sa quality ng leading brand. For 735 ml, 66.15 siya. Upon checking sa other brand, nasa around 150 pesos na yung ganito kalaki.
In our comparison, we found out that some products are even 50% cheaper than leading brands. But worry not, as brands and even the expiration dates are also displayed for the comfort of consumers. As for food products, the Takal store made sure it's all FDA approved. While products here are still limited, the store makes sure that what they offer is good for the people, the planet, and especially the pocket. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza, We Are One News.
Infrastructure conglomerate Metro Pacific Investments is expanding into agribusiness. This as they acquire a majority stake in the Laguna Creamery Incorporated, otherwise known as the Carmen's Best Group. With the deal, MPIC will own a majority of the company at 51% via a 198 million peso investment. Metro Pacific President Manny V. Pangilinan says that apart from being a growth opportunity for the company, the acquisition will also be a boost for the country, which currently imports almost all of its dairy requirements. Aside from ice cream, Carmen's Best also produces the Holly's Milk line, as well as various cheeses and yogurts.
We'd like to build on that, on what they have as a foundation for future businesses to enhance the brand, ensure that it is marketed, sold, and distributed nationwide, but at the same time, marketed internationally.
Better have some of that ice cream here. Well, that wraps up today's Big Story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. On behalf of Robbie Alampaya, I'm Gretchen Ho, and we are One News.